Why would one of the greatest investors in the world spend up to 80% of his day doing just one single thing? It sounds strange, almost unbelievable. While many people are busy attending meetings and rushing through hundreds of decisions every day, Warren Buffett chose a slower path, reading, thinking, and focusing almost entirely on what matters most. The secret behind this seemingly simple habit is something he calls the bandwidth rule, and that small, almost unremarkable principle helped shape an investing legend, turning an ordinary man into a billionaire admired around the world. When people talk about the greatest investors in history, one name almost always appears immediately: Warren Buffett. He is widely known around the world as the Oracle of Omaha, a humble man with an extraordinary ability to see value where others cannot. What makes his story even more remarkable is that his journey did not begin in a billionaire family or with a massive financial advantage. Buffett started out as just an ordinary boy in Omaha, Nebraska. From a very young age, he had an unusual fascination with money and business. Young Warren sold newspapers, sold chewing gum, delivered magazines, and even placed soda machines in barbershops to earn extra cash. At the age of 11, he made his very first investment in the stock market. Those small early experiences laid the foundation for the investment mindset he would later develop. As he grew older, Buffett was deeply influenced by the value investing philosophy of Benjamin Graham, learned to search for good companies that the market was undervaluing, and then patiently hold them for long periods of time. This strategy may sound simple, but it produced extraordinary results. Through his investment company, Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett transformed what was once a struggling textile business into a massive investment conglomerate that owned stakes in many of the world's most famous companies. Over several decades, his investment performance far outpaced the market. His wealth grew so steadily that he eventually became one of the richest people on the planet. Yet he still lives in the house he bought in 1958 and maintains an incredibly modest lifestyle. However, what truly makes Buffett legendary is not just the amount of money he made. Many people who have met him are surprised to learn that Buffett's schedule is almost empty. There are no endless meetings, no packed agenda. Instead, he spends most of his time doing just two things: reading and thinking. In fact, Buffett once revealed that about 80% of his day is spent reading. Might sound surprisingly simple for a billionaire running an entire financial empire, but behind this ordinary habit lies an incredibly powerful principle of thinking. Principle Buffett calls the bandwidth rule, and perhaps this quiet principle is the real secret behind the multi-billion-dollar investment decisions he has made throughout his career. Why would a billionaire running an entire financial empire spend most of his time doing something as simple as reading? This question has surprised many people who study the life of Warren Buffett. While most CEOs have extremely busy schedules filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and constant travel, Buffett follows a completely different routine: read, and read. He once shared that around 80% of his day is devoted to reading and thinking, and what he reads is not motivational books or entertainment news. Instead, he spends his time studying financial statements, annual reports, corporate filings, industry documents, business books, and stacks of economic newspapers. Some days, Buffett reads up to 500 pages of material. For him, reading is not just about gathering information. It is a way of building knowledge through compounding. Buffett once compared knowledge to a snowball rolling down a hill. The farther it rolls, the bigger it becomes. Every book, every financial report, and every business story adds another layer of understanding. Over the years, this accumulated knowledge becomes a powerful advantage that allows him to see things others often overlook. In investing, Understanding a business is critical. Buffett does not invest based on emotions or market rumors. Before committing billions of dollars to a company, he may spend weeks or even months studying everything related to that business, its history, business model, competitive advantages, leadership team, and financial condition. Because of this deep preparation, when markets become volatile, he does not panic. He knows exactly what he owns. Reading deeply and thinking carefully allows Buffett to view a company like a true owner, not just a stock symbol on a screen. This habit has shaped many of Berkshire Hathaway's most famous investments, from insurance companies and railroads to some of the world's leading consumer brands. But behind this simple habit of reading lies a deeper philosophy. Buffett understands that human attention and focus are limited. If the mind is constantly pulled into endless meetings, trivial information, and daily noise, it no longer has enough mental bandwidth to think deeply. So he deliberately protects his time, and from this idea emerged a principle he calls the bandwidth rule. So what exactly is Warren Buffett's bandwidth rule, and why can a principle that sounds so simple lead to multi-billion-dollar investment decisions? To understand this, we first need to look at an important concept: mental bandwidth. The human brain works like an information processing system. It receives data, analyzes it, and makes decisions. But just like an internet connection, the brain's bandwidth is not unlimited. When too much information, too many tasks, and too many distractions appear at the same time, the ability to think deeply begins to decline. Most of us have experienced this. Emails keep arriving. Messages keep popping up. Meetings follow one after another. By the end of the day, we may feel extremely busy, yet we haven't made a single, truly thoughtful decision. That is what happens when the brain's bandwidth becomes overloaded. Warren Buffett understood this very early in his career. He realized that great decisions rarely come from constant busyness. They come from clear thinking and deep focus. So instead of filling his schedule with endless activities, Buffett does the opposite. He protects his mental bandwidth very carefully. He avoids unnecessary meetings. He refuses to let his schedule be filled with trivial tasks. And he dedicates most of his time to the two activities that matter most: reading and thinking. When his mind is not constantly interrupted by hundreds of small distractions, he can concentrate all of his intellectual energy on the questions that truly matter. Questions like, does this business have a durable competitive advantage? Is the management trustworthy and capable? Is the market price lower than the company's true value? Questions like these require hours or even days of deep thinking. That is why, while many people try to do more things, Buffett chooses to do fewer things but think much more deeply. Interestingly, this method is not limited to investing. It also shapes the way Buffett runs his massive company, Berkshire Hathaway. He gives a great deal of autonomy to the CEOs of the companies he owns and rarely interferes in their day-to-day operations. This allows him to keep his attention focused on the few strategic decisions that truly matter. In other words, the bandwidth rule is the art of protecting your ability to think. And in an increasingly noisy world, where attention is constantly divided every minute, this principle may be more valuable today than ever before. Why would a man running hundreds of billions of dollars conglomerate have a schedule that is almost empty? For many CEOs, a typical day is packed with meetings, business trips, strategic calls, and an endless stream of decisions. But for Warren Buffett, the way he works is completely different. His schedule is famous for having very few meetings. Many people who have visited Buffett's office in Omaha are surprised by how quiet it feels. There is no packed calendar, no large team of assistants rushing back and forth. In fact, much of his day is intentionally left unscheduled. But that does not mean he is being idle. It is space for deep thinking. Buffett believes that, in investing, the quality of thinking matters far more than the quantity of activity. A single correct decision can generate tens of billions of dollars in returns, while hundreds of rushed small decisions can easily lead to costly mistakes. So instead of trying to do as many things as possible every day, Buffett focuses on one principle: think carefully before acting. This philosophy is clearly reflected in how he invests through Berkshire Hathaway. Over many decades, Buffett has not constantly bought and sold stocks like many other investors. In fact, there were years when he made almost no major investments at all. But when he does act, his decisions are often remarkably precise. One famous example is his large investment in Coca-Cola in the late 1980s. Buffett spent a great deal of time studying the company before buying its stock. Once he believed he fully understood the company's true value, he invested billions of dollars. That investment later became one of the most successful deals in the history of investing. Another example is the acquisition of BNSF Railway in 2009, which Buffett once described as a bet on the economic future of America. Over time, it proved to be an extremely wise decision. What do these decisions have in common? Not speed, not busyness, but the patience to think deeply before taking action. That is why Buffett's seemingly empty schedule is actually one of his most valuable assets. It protects his mental bandwidth and allows him to focus all of his intellectual energy on the decisions that truly matter. What happens when the human brain is forced to process too much information every single day? This is exactly the reality of our modern world. Within just a few minutes, our phones can receive dozens of notifications, emails, messages, social media updates, breaking news, short videos, advertisements. All of them constantly compete for our attention. Every time we switch from one task to another, the brain must rebuild its focus. That process consumes mental energy. When it happens hundreds of times a day, our ability to think deeply begins to weaken. People become busy, but not truly productive. Many studies show that when the brain is overwhelmed with information, it tends to choose fast and simple decisions instead of thoughtful ones. This often leads to mistakes, poor judgment, and decisions influenced by emotions or short-term news. In other words, too much information can make thinking more shallow, while much of the world is caught in this cycle. Warren Buffett chose a completely different path. He deliberately protects his mental bandwidth. Buffett does not spend hours scrolling through social media. He also does not allow his schedule to be filled with endless meetings. Instead, most of his day is devoted to reading and thinking in quiet concentration. He reads financial reports, business books, economic newspapers, and documents related to companies. But more importantly, after reading, he takes time to reflect. Those quiet moments allow him to connect pieces of information together, instead of reacting to every small piece of market news. Buffett looks at the long-term picture. He does not allow the emotions of the crowd to influence his investment decisions. That is why, for many decades, through Berkshire Hathaway, he has been able to make remarkably accurate decisions during moments when most of the market is panicking. The difference between Buffett and many other people is not that he has more information. It is that he has more space to think deeply about that information. In a noisy world where attention is constantly being pulled in every direction, the ability to keep the mind calm, focused, and clear may be one of the rarest and most valuable advantages anyone can have. Is the bandwidth rule only useful for billionaires and major investors? Or can ordinary people apply it in their everyday lives? The answer is yes, anyone can apply it. What makes Warren Buffett different is not that he works harder than everyone else. The real difference is that he protects his ability to think better than most people. And that is something anyone can learn. The first step is to remove activities that are not truly important. In modern life, A large amount of time is consumed by things that provide little long-term value, mindlessly scrolling through social media, constantly checking the news, or replying to messages that do not really matter. Each activity may only take a few minutes, but together they consume a significant amount of the brain's mental bandwidth. When we reduce these distractions, we create more mental space to think clearly. The second step is to make time for reading books. Professional materials or thoughtful content allows knowledge to accumulate gradually over time. This has been one of Buffett's core habits for decades. Each page of a book is like a small brick, building the foundation of our thinking. The third step is to create quiet moments for reflection. It does not have to be complicated. It could simply be 20 to 30 minutes a day spent writing down ideas, analyzing an important problem, or reflecting on major decisions in life. These quiet moments allow the brain to connect information and see the bigger picture. Another important step is to reduce distractions from phones and social media. Simply turning off notifications for a certain period of time, putting the phone away while working, or creating technology-free hours can dramatically increase your ability to focus. When the brain is no longer pulled away by dozens of notifications every hour, the ability to think deeply begins to return. And this leads to the most important point. The quality of a person's life and career is usually not determined by the number of decisions they make, but by the quality of their most important decisions. Protecting your mental bandwidth, just as Buffett does, allows you to think more clearly, stay calmer, and see further into the future. And sometimes, a single good decision made at the right moment can completely change the course of a person's life. Why do many successful people spend so much time thinking, instead of constantly taking action like most of us do? At first glance, this may seem to contradict the common belief that success comes from non-stop work. In the modern world, busyness is often seen as a sign of productivity. The more packed a schedule is, the more people feel they are being effective. But the reality is quite different. There's a huge difference between being busy and being effective. Being busy means doing many things: answering emails, attending meetings, handling small tasks continuously. The day passes in a rush of activity, yet it often produces little real value. Being effective, on the other hand, means that a few correct actions create significant results. Warren Buffett understands this better than almost anyone. He does not try to make hundreds of decisions every year. Instead, he patiently waits for opportunities that are truly clear and meaningful. Buffett has often emphasized that one good decision can create billions of dollars in value. But when decisions are rushed and poorly considered, a series of bad choices can destroy enormous amounts of value. In investing, mistakes often come from impatience, chasing news, reacting emotionally, or trying to act too quickly. Buffett does the opposite. He spends most of his time reading, observing, and thinking. If he does not fully understand a business, he is willing to wait. But once he truly understands a company and believes in its value, he acts decisively. Through Berkshire Hathaway. Because of this philosophy, over several decades, Buffett has made relatively few major decisions, but each one has carried extraordinary impact. This reflects a deeper principle. The quality of thinking determines the quality of action. When people spend enough time analyzing, asking questions, and looking at a problem from different perspectives, they tend to make wiser choices. But when they are trapped in constant busyness, decisions often become rushed and shallow. That is why sometimes slowing down to think is actually the fastest path to success. What are the biggest lessons we can learn from Warren Buffett's habit of reading and thinking? At first glance, his secret may seem very simple: read, think, and be patient. Yet these seemingly ordinary principles have formed the foundation of an investment career that has lasted for more than half a century. the first lesson is lifelong learning. Buffett is famous for reading hundreds of pages every day. He believes that knowledge accumulates over time, just like compound interest in finance. Every book, every financial report, and every in-depth article adds another layer of understanding. After many years, this growing body of knowledge becomes an enormous advantage. It allows him to see businesses and markets more clearly than most people. The second lesson is patience. In the modern world, many people want quick results. But Buffett understands that truly great opportunities do not appear every day. That is why he is willing to wait. There have been long periods when he made almost no major investments at all, simply continuing to read, research, and observe. When the right opportunity finally appears, he is fully prepared. The third lesson is deep focus. Buffett carefully protects his time for thinking. He avoids activities that scatter his attention so that he can concentrate completely on analyzing businesses and evaluating their true value. Because of this discipline, every investment decision made through Berkshire Hathaway is considered with great care. The fourth lesson is long-term thinking. Buffett does not view the market day by day or month by month. Instead, he evaluates businesses over many years, sometimes even decades. This perspective allows him to ignore short-term market fluctuations and maintain confidence in strong long-term investments. What is remarkable is that none of these principles are complicated. There's no mysterious formula, no overly complex investment strategy. Just a few very basic habits. Read widely, think deeply, wait patiently, and see further into the future than others. Yet, it is this consistent discipline with simple principles that has allowed Buffett to maintain success for decades and become one of the greatest investors of all time. Why is that? The bandwidth rule, not only useful in investing, but also capable of changing the way we work and live every day. At its core, Warren Buffett's principle is built on a very simple idea. The human brain has limits when it comes to focus and information processing. When too many tasks compete for our attention at the same time, our mental bandwidth quickly becomes exhausted. When that happens, the quality of our thinking declines. In the workplace, this is easy to see. Many people constantly switch between emails, messages, meetings, and different tasks throughout the day. Each time we shift our attention, the brain needs time to regain focus. When this happens repeatedly, our mental energy becomes scattered, and productivity drops significantly. On the other hand, when we protect our mental bandwidth, work becomes clearer and more effective. By concentrating on only a few important tasks each day, the brain can process information more deeply and generate more creative solutions. This is also how many leaders and strategic thinkers operate. Fewer tasks, but much higher quality thinking. This principle does not apply only to work. It also has a direct impact on mental well-being. When the mind is constantly overloaded with information, people are more likely to feel stressed. Small thoughts accumulate and keep the mind busy even when we are not working. But when we reduce unnecessary noise and distractions, the brain finally has a chance to rest and recover. This helps reduce stress and increases the feeling of control over our lives. The bandwidth rule also affects our personal relationships. Our minds are distracted by work, phones, or social media. We often fail to truly listen to others. But when we give someone our full attention during a conversation, the quality of human connection becomes much deeper. In other words, managing our mental bandwidth does not just lead to better investment decisions like those Warren Buffett made while leading Berkshire Hathaway. It also helps us work more effectively, live more calmly, and build more meaningful relationships. And sometimes, the biggest change in life does not come from doing more things. It comes from protecting the space needed to think more clearly. If Warren Buffett were starting his career today in a world filled with social media, massive amounts of data, and news updates every second, would he still follow the bandwidth rule? The answer would most likely be yes. In fact, the principle might be even more important than ever. Today, the amount of information a person encounters each day is far greater than it was a few decades ago. Financial news, market analysis, videos, social media, investment forums, everything appears constantly, competing for our attention. In that environment, many people believe that to succeed, they must follow everything. But this approach often causes the brain to become overloaded very quickly. Buffett has long demonstrated the opposite idea. You don't need to know everything, you only need to understand the most important things deeply. Instead of chasing every piece of market news, he spends most of his time reading company reports, business books, and analytical materials. Then, he thinks. This process of deep reading and careful reflection is what helped him make many of his famous investment decisions through Berkshire Hathaway. If Buffett were living in today's world, he might have access to far more data sources, but it is very likely that he would still follow the same core principle: filter out informational noise in order to protect independent thinking. In reality, as the world becomes louder and more chaotic, the greatest advantage is no longer having more information than others. The internet has already made information almost free and accessible to everyone. The real advantage lies in the ability to think clearly while everyone else is distracted. That is the true power of the bandwidth rule. This principle does not depend on technology, markets, or time periods. It is based on a simple truth: the human brain still needs focus to think deeply. So no matter how fast the world changes, some fundamental principles remain timeless. Read widely to understand deeply. Think carefully before acting, and patiently wait for opportunities that are truly clear. Perhaps it is this quiet commitment to simple principles that allowed Buffett to build a career that has lasted for many decades. Before we finish, ask yourself one question: are you willing to spend more time thinking deeply, instead of constantly chasing busyness every day? That is exactly how Warren Buffett protects his mental bandwidth and makes decisions that shape entire careers. If this video made you reflect, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts about the bandwidth rule in the comments below. Your ideas might inspire many other people as well. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.